have been running, and the name Nadine James popped into my head. Who is Nadine James?
Who is Nadine James? I firstly identify as being a mother. Being a mother takes up most of my identity, a mother of teenage daughters. Outside of that, I'm a professional. I have worked in the finance industry for over 20 something years. Can also say that I am a musician or a vocalist, someone I think I would dub myself as being a musician because I've always loved music. From my early childhood, I can remember singing. I hear parents say, you're only singing, but music has always been a part of me, even when you're not paying much attention to it. So I will say that I also identify as a musician, more so now than in the past. Now that I'm maturing and getting older and finding myself, now that I am trying to take away some of myself from being a mother and positioning it into being a person, I'm getting back in touch with that music side of me.
How did you determine that you would be in finance as a professional area as opposed to the creative sector?
I did not determine. I think that was determined for me. To be honest, the way that the older generation looked upon music and creatives, they didn't put much importance on it, and it wasn't considered to be a career of choice. So I didn't have much support in terms of developing that side of me, no guidance, if any at all, to that side of me. I think I was molded to believe that life was about getting married, having children, and having a job. So being molded in that fashion and that mindset, it just carried on to the fact that you go to school, you study, and whatever the course that the course that I chose was business. And that gradually took me into finance, and that's where I ended up. Now, I don't want to say it's not my passion, but that's what has been paying my bills for the last years. And for that, I am extremely grateful.
Wonderful. So while you work in finance and that facilitates your lifestyle, you
Mhm.
recently started to do a lot more in terms of singing. Um,
Correct.
what would you say was the time you knew that singing was something you wanted to do?
That is a long story. It was also a very challenging point in my life. To summarize, I got to the point where I realized that when I looked at me holistically, I couldn't find me. I realized that I was pouring from an empty cup. My cup was empty, right? And I needed to find myself. Taking a step back, I always dreamt as an LA watch Whitney Houston on the TV or watch Sissy Tyson, Jennifer Hudson, Celine Dion. And you look at these people and you see them on TV and they're making these notes and it's, wow, this looks so good. And I wish I could see myself doing that. Those were my dreams when I was a child. Unfortunately, I didn't have the guidance and I didn't have the self-motivation to actually take that dream and make it a reality. So when I got to this pinnacle of my life and took stock of myself, I was like, I can't find me. I can't find that foundation, that inner part of me. What do I do that makes me happy? In order for me to transfer that happiness onto others, the people that I am responsible for, I couldn't find it. Then I started to self-examine, where is my music? When I was younger, I played pan, I traveled pan when I was a steel pan player. Steel pan took me across the world. I went to Malaysia playing pan, right? I traveled with music and I was singing in the choir and doing all these sorts of things because it has always been something that I really enjoyed. Life happened and I had to make decisions. Of course, that creative side of me, that passion that I have, what I was doing, I had to give up. So in taking stock, Nadine, you need to do something for you. Your kids are at a stage now where I believe that I have molded them enough so that I can release some of that responsibility and put some of that energy into developing myself. And that honestly did not only happen, let's say, about 5 years ago, when I was like, you know what? I can do this. I want to do this. This is what makes me happy. I want to sing and do great things with my voice. That's when it happened. Not much more than 5 years ago. When I decided I'm going back to this because this is me, this is what makes me happy, this is what I'm doing for myself. When I made that decision, I started to take steps to make it a reality. I never did voice training before that, so I was just going on raw talent. I started taking steps to go to a voice training class. I go to the vocal coaching class and things like that. So then I started to make those steps into becoming better, fine-tuning the talent, the natural talent that I have, and with the hopes of realizing my dream someday. Maybe I'll be on a big stage somewhere and singing all those big notes, doing great things, and feeling proud of myself at the end of the day.
What has been the hardest part about being a singer in Trinidad and Tobago?
In Trinidad and Tobago, being a singer, I think that we, as a country, because our culture is more of the soca, the groovy soca, the calypso, the hardest part of being a singer is that avenues are very narrow. If I am not interested in any of those categories and the genres of music, then there's not much opportunities for me. Let's say, just for example, if I wanted to be an R&B singer, if I liked that genre of music, that was where my passion lied. There isn't much opportunities within my country for me to explore that. Yeah. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges of being a singer in Trinidad.
You've said the avenues are very narrow for
Mhm.
singers in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
How could we rethink that?
I think we have to be more open as a people to developing more genres of music. And I think it's going to span the scope of all persons involved in the creative industry, from the singer, the actual vocalist, to the musicians, to the engineers, to the community at large, because you can do all of that and put it out in the public, and the public is not accepting or receiving, then. So I think we have to be a lot more open in terms of accepting and trying new things, and more encouraging as a people as well. We can also try, the persons that make the decisions, to invest more into our artists and our creatives so that they have the necessary resources in order to explore different avenues. No, I'm not saying anything is wrong with Calypso and Soca, because I am a Calypso lover. In 2024, I entered for the first time the National Calypso Monarch, right? I've grown up on Calypso and I've absolutely loved Calypso. So I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying that the avenues, the genres of music in terms of having that space to do things outside of what we are culturally known for is narrow.
So if a miracle happened and you could transform something in our country so that the creative persons have wider opportunities, what would be some things you'd do?
That is a hard question. I have one. I think I have one. And I'm going to like the Chinese culture and gymnastics. Now, my daughter, one of my daughters is into sport. And at one period in her life, she was a gymnast. She started doing training as a gymnast from the age of 6. The Chinese culture, they're doing their gymnasts. They start to train from very young and groom them into this talent. We have the funding necessary to invest. I will start with taking it to the schools and educating our young people from as early as possible to the possibilities within the creative industry. I will start so that we are groomed, understanding that these are avenues that you could take, not necessarily the typical things of the lawyers, the doctors, the principals, the teachers, creatives to have a space. So encourage them from very young to get into music, to be engineers, studio engineers, etc. But we need money to do that. So the miracle would be to have the funding, to put the infrastructure in place, to start taking it to our schools or preschools. Yeah, ECC.
You would begin with creativity in our preschool situations where we are able to identify in our people who are the creatives.
Yeah. I see that as being a possibility, as helping us change, become better and more encouraging and more open to the creative industry in our country. In the end, it will benefit us as a country. I see it as only being beneficial because not everybody could be a doctor. Not everybody can be a lawyer. Not everybody is fashioned and molded to be a teacher. We need someone who makes the music, who provides that sound that we use when we come home from work. We've had a hard day and we just need to de-stress. We put on a little soft music. We put on a nice little calypso from Singing Sandra and we have that music playing. Yeah, we need those people. Everyone plays an important part in society for the betterment of all.
You talked about being a pan player. Tell me a little about that.
In secondary school, as early as probably Form 1. So right out of primary school, I remember passing for, it was common entrance back then. I remember passing for Five Rivers Junior Sec. That's when it was morning and evening shift. And I was on the morning shift. I will always remember my music teacher. His name was Mr. Downs. An invitation was extended for the students. I can't really remember exactly how it happened, but I ended up going to this pan yard that was in Tagarigo. The man's name was Selwyn Paul, and the name of the school was Paris Pan School. I would go there on our afternoons after school. Certain days in the week, we started off by learning songs, learning to play the pan. I had started off on the double tenor. And then I realized that it had too many people fighting for the double tenor. Playing the double second, I went to him and I said, so what is the name of this pan? He said, the double second. I said, only you playing on this pan? He said, yeah. I said, okay, so can I learn it? He said, sure. And that was the beginning of history. I started to learn to play the double second and I fell in love with it. Moving from just learning to play random songs like Lion King, we went into Panorama. My first Panorama experience, oh my goodness, it was lovely. It was learning to play the pan. It was the excitement. It was the late nights. We were practicing until late nights. And then when it's coming closer to the Panorama competition itself, is everybody coming together, the drums, the percussions, the iron. It was just fabulous. I absolutely loved playing pan. And that is where it all began. And it just continued year after year. I never stopped. I crossed the big stage in the Savannah on finals night, playing with Renegades, Steel Orchestra. It was a fantastic experience. I was playing on finals night, and I was crossing with the band of my choice that I still support to today, Renegades, right? Things happened after that, and I had to make decisions, and I gave up playing because of other responsibilities.
And you said that you represented the country abroad. Tell us about that.
Paris Pan School was the name of the band. He got an opportunity with contacts in Malaysia. And the opportunity was for us to go to some cultural show. I remember it being, I think it was the year 2000, when we were all scared about how it will affect time and if the clock could take the zeros. I remember that. I remember that. And not being able to use the elevators and stuff like that. The opportunity came, the manager of the band, and he did all the necessary organization, and we went. It was a group of young people because we were all in school. Malaysia, it was some 2000 millennials, something that they had, and we performed our songs. We played, it was really lovely. We went to see Singapore. We played for the king at some palace or some castle now. And we played for the king, and then we traveled somewhere else. We also went to New York. I remember going to New York, representing Trinidad and Tobago, flying our flag high.
So Nadine,
Ah,
you've represented our country playing pan.
yeah.
Your vocals is your current interest. So you're a very talented person, Nadine. Where do you see your future with your talent?
I see myself in the future as being a world-renowned vocalist, touching people with my voice, whether I choose to sing gospel or secular music and more of the soft R&B, jazz genre. Passionate about what I do and being used to bring that peace, that calm, that enjoyment, that love for music onto others on a big stage somewhere. That's why I see myself.
And if we had an opportunity to send a message to our leaders about the creative sector, what would you say?
I would say to them that the same amount of attention, vigor, aggression that they place on other sectors in the country, in the economy, the same should be applied to the creatives and the entertainment industry. We need to move past looking as music and looking at the creatives as just a luxury and rather necessity. Now, hear me when I go with this. Creatives play an extremely important role in our community and society. For me, one of the biggest situations that proved how important the creatives and entertainment persons are in our society was through the COVID-19 pandemic. We all remember being shut in our homes, unable to leave 24/7, right? What kept us sane? The music that was playing on the radios, the creatives putting on plays or doing shows and finding ways to get it into your homes using the technology of the internet and social medias. If those persons weren't passionate and weren't aggressive and weren't creating and ensuring that you have putting things in place for persons to have an outlet, to have to relaxation, because you're indoors and you're not doing anything other than the basic, which is because you can't leave to go anywhere, so you're not socializing. The creatives saved our mental health in that time. Our creatives should be considered, planned, and invested in, as with all the other sectors in our society.
Wonderful message. And there's one more message before we leave. You say to a young person who really wants to be a creative, but they're being pushed in the direction of the traditional forms, occupations.
But I say to a young person, depending on how old the young person is, because if the young person is, let's say, you've identified that they have a passion for this at the age of 10, they're still under their parents' guidance, and therefore they will still have to do what they're told to do. My message to that person is never give up and never lose that spark because in losing that spark, you lose yourself. So hold on. There might be one auntie or uncle within the family that says that continues to encourage you silently. But it is always, if it is there and it was planted by the Father Almighty, then it will always remain there. So hold fast, do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And trust me, that time will come, because all things in God's perfect time.
Thank you very much, Nadine. As we come to an end, Nadine has been in finance, but really is a creative person, both in terms of pan and in terms of vocals. Until next time while running, be safe.